Hello and welcome back to Mac at the Movies. Today I'm going to review for you the 2019 French film Portrait of a Lady on Fire. This was directed by Céline Sciamma, who also directed Water Lilies, Girlhood, Tomboy, and My Life as a Zucchini, which later got a US release, all done by American voice actors. It's a claymated film. Nick Offerman, Michael Cera, few people are in it. Really good film. Check it out. This one was released on Lily's Films, September 18th, 2019. It stars Del Hanel, who plays Heloise, Noémie Merlant, who plays Mariana, Luana Bejrami, who plays Sophie, and Valerie Galino, who plays Dee, the mother. Dee doesn't play a huge role throughout the film. It primarily follows Heloise, Mariana, who is the woman who is hired to paint Heloise, and Sophie, who is essentially like a chamber girl, maid, if you will, in the film. The film does take place in France, and it was filmed primarily in Brittany. They just wanted the beautiful landscapes, and it is beautiful. When you see it, it's a period piece, but I don't believe that anywhere in the film they discuss a matter of what year or time period. I know the director has stated in the past that some of the movies that she's done, she doesn't want to give an exact timeline, that just wants to focus on the film itself as like a piece of art. And by having a timeline, it sort of takes away from the overall story and kind of gives, question of why would they be using this particular cell phone in this year, things like that. So by taking that out of the picture, you're kind of given this, ambiguous timeline of when the film could have been taken place. A good example of that, if any of you have seen the horror film It Follows, it's kind of left to the ambiguity of time, because like the devices being used or anything being used isn't really time. It can't really put a time stamp on when the film takes place, which I feel really brings you into the picture as a whole. This is obviously a timepiece. Takes place a long time ago, and that's kind of what and so it allows you to really get into the story. All in all, I love this movie, which I'll talk about later, and what I liked more about it. So Mariana, she is hired to paint Eloise, who is Dee's daughter. She's brought in, they've had people, other artists brought in to paint before, but I suppose the paintings were never to the liking of Heloise, and she would destroy the painting, something would happen, it just wouldn't get done. Which I'll discuss here in a minute, or reasons why I think that happened. So she's brought in to essentially paint the portrait of Heloise in secret. So she spends a lot of time. She's brought in to spend time with Heloise and to get a good memory of what she looks like, taking notes along the way. She brings just little sketching pieces of paper to, if she notices the way she places her hands, things like that. So she has to essentially put this portrait together by memory. one thing I enjoyed was the times that they spend together. They start to learn about one another. You find out that at the beginning of the film, Eloise's sister died. She jumped off a cliff. Some people thought it was an accident. Sophie, the chambermaid, she believes that the sister jumped intentionally. And when Mariana asked her why she thought that, she said because when it happened, she didn't cry out. She just turned around, she was gone, and looked over and noticed that she had leapt to her death. Heloise and Mariana, they talk on the beach later in the film. Mariana's trying to get more information about Eloise and like who she is, to I suppose to, you know, spend more time with her, of course, because she has to get that image of her in her memory to create the portrait. But she's not afraid to ask questions that other people may have tiptoed around, like the death of her sister, what happened. And so one of the questions she brings up is, you know, she asks like, what about your sister's death? You know, she finds out that that it was there was an apology letter left behind, and she asked like, what did she apologize about? And Heloise tells her essentially she apologized for passing her fate along to her sister, which later gets discussed, like what fate. And that's when the idea of an arranged marriage, a more in-depth understanding of an arranged marriage that's going to be taking place between Eloise and another man who she's never met. So this is when I start to understand that it's not so much that Eloise doesn't want her portrait taken, like wants her portrait created. I think it's more of a not wanting an example of a time that she can look back to and say, this is when I was happy. That's what I gathered from it anyway. So you kind of see that she's unhappy with the idea that she's going to have this arranged marriage. And any time that there is a portrait done of her, she either protests sitting for it, or there's a destruction of the portrait where you see the one portrait, the last one that was done, the face was smudged out. So I think the reason behind all that is that she doesn't want this example of a time that was better. So if she's in this, you know, miserable marriage, like she doesn't want to remember that there ever was happiness before that. She just wants to know what is. So maybe a portrait made after her being married, it would just signify what, you know, she knows from that point. She has no memory or anything to remind her of what would, you know, make her think about those moments. The Mariana, she is essentially, she is made to follow Heloise again to get to know her, but she is suggested to let her go on her own one day, which Heloise did not understand really, and which I get. You know, that's the sort of the point that she's there, is to be like, she doesn't know that she's painting the portrait, so she just thinks she's there to accompany her, to make sure, I suppose, she doesn't do anything brash on her own. And Mariana suggests she go by herself one day, you know, just suggest solitude. And when she does that, Heloise comes back. She returns after that, and she was just like, you know, that was a great idea. You know, I had all this time to think about this and to think about that. And she, you know, asked like what she thought about, and she, Eloise tells Mariana that she thought about how she missed her. So she kind of introduces this idea of solitude and how you can, you know, how solitude can sort of give a person time to think about other things or other people, and how if you weren't alone to your own devices, would you ever have those thoughts? And I like the idea of that. You know, one thing I personally like to do myself is a lot of things by myself. So, you know, going out to a restaurant and just having a, you know, one person meal and just enjoying my time alone, or going to a movie by myself. There's just me involved in that movie, and, you know, it just lets me think instead of having that, well, you know, while I love, you know, going out to eat or going to a movie or hanging out in a park or something like that with other people, you know, it's a different experience on how you interpret your thoughts or what you might want to do. So I like that this allowed her to introduce a feeling of longing in her, and that, you know, a feeling that she would or may not have felt otherwise if she was accompanied by Mariana. At one point, and I think it signifies, you know, just an igniting of passion, but Mariana's looking at the previous portrait of Eloise, and with the smudged face, and she has the, you know, it's all done by candlelight, and she's, you know, looking at this portrait, and, you know, right when she gets around to the area of the heart, the portrait catches fire, and Mariana just sort of steps back and watches it happen until later it's, you know, transferred to the fireplace to finish burning. And I think that it's both you know, a symbol of igniting passion in Heloise, and the significance of the burning of the complete portrait is a way to start over and start fresh. So it's not so much as, you know, that she was trying to destroy something, as the director was trying to, you know, symbolize the future passion and starting anew. Also in the film, there are moments where Marianne, she sees a ghost, like a ghost image of Heloise, in what I, you know, it kind of symbolized. It looked like a nightgown, but also a wedding dress. So it seems like there's also a growing passion in her, and that she's being haunted by that, and the semblance and of just like her feelings of, you know, what's going to happen, like what's going to come, and to take whatever, you know, time she can, you know, because she's just being haunted by what's going to be. Beyond that, there's, while they're, let me backtrack a second. The portrait that Marianne does by memory gets destroyed. She looks at the portrait with Eloise and realizes that it's not her. Like, I mean, it's her, but it's not her. So they destroy the photo. The mother gets upset, and Heloise decides to sit for the portrait, which, you know, baffles her mother. So her mother allows her to allows Mariana to stay around and complete the portrait, as Eloise is sitting in for it. while they're making the portrait, Mariana is looking at Heloise and like describing how she needs to pose, or about her smile, or just little bitty actions um, that she's doing, and describing those actions. Eloise at one point in time tells her to stop what she's doing and to come over to her. Sort of like it feels like an order, like, stop what you're doing, come here, like we're gonna talk. And it ends up being like I'm gonna turn the table on you, like, look at the direction I'm seeing you from. And then she starts describing little nuances like Mariana described of her, and you sort of see this like passion building. I feel like if this was an American film, they would have started passionately making love, or whatever that given scene. But what I liked about this is that it allowed that passion to build and grow, which you see later and done in private. And like I really like that. So in this moment, you see that she's sort of like, they're both describing just little things that people notice about you that you don't necessarily notice about yourself, and just little pleasantries and little nuances, like the way your eyes, when you're intrigued about something, your eyebrows rise, or when you're upset, your mouth sort of drops and you don't know what to do. And so just little things like that. And I think it adds to the story and the overall growth of the passion that you see later. There's a moment when they're all reading, it's Heloise, Mariana, and Sophie. They're all sitting around a table reading Orpheus and Eurydice. And that they start breaking down this moment of the story when Orpheus is, they're having an impassionate conversation. These two characters, the book is based off, and Eurydice is, they're discussing a love between the two of them. And as Orpheus leaves, Eurydice tells him to turn around. And so he turns around and then leaves, instead of, like, it's sort of like a way to describe this character, and which when I got to this part of the film, you see it kind of open up, and things start to make more sense. And the things that I thought earlier in the film, like when they were sitting at the beach, and the idea of the portrait and arranged marriage, everything like that, and why the portrait wasn't wanting to be done, is you start to see in this book. And then the film continues and follows after this, sort of kind of like at a midway point. And it's showing you that you can either have the choice of the poet, and you leave only retaining the memory of what you had, rather than the choice of the lover, and taking the moment for what it is, staying around, and either it goes on and you live a great and wonderful life, or it doesn't, and it buds out, and it just is what it is. So in this, it pretty much encapsulates the rest of the film. So there's a love story. These two Heloise and Mariana, they fall in love, and they realize that that love can't be after the portrait is completed, and that Mariana, she chooses to walk away like Orpheus did. And, she chose to take the poet's way out and just have that last memory of happiness rather than what could have come from their relationship, especially in the world and at that time. Uh, who knows how that could have turned out, ended up. So to sort of gather everything, that they fall in love. It's it's the story, how you see it unfold throughout the film. I don't think there are any real surprises necessarily. I think that the film writes itself out as it should and as it's supposed to. A couple of things in the film I did notice is there's a scene which involves Sophie. She finds out that she's pregnant, and I suppose at the time that this film is set around, if she were found to be, an unwed mother, she may have lost her job, what have you, and been on her own to try and find out what she needs to do to keep going. She winds up going to a local woman and she gets an abortion. There's a very sad and unique juxtaposition during this scene. You see it all unfold and take place. She comes in, the lady lays her down and performs the abortion. As it's happening, there's a baby next to her. The woman's child is next to her on the bed, and you see this sort of connection, and like she doesn't want to have this abortion, but because of what she's presented with, she has no choice. And so you see it's like she's face to face with what she's lost, and you see like a breakdown of her soul. And it's a very intimate moment. Heloise and Mariana, they're there. Heloise makes, Mariana's trying to look away, and she's like, watch what's happening. It's you have to understand that your choices have actions, and they may not all be the best. So this is the outcome of the action she chose to take. But it's just a very, like, you get into that scene, and especially when it pans in on her and the baby, and she's crying, just saying everything. It sort of breaks you down in that scene, and it's just a very beautiful scene. There's another scene where Heloise and Mariana are, it's their last moments together, and Mariana, she's drawing a portrait of Heloise, and they discuss like, oh, you can, you'll always have my memory. You'll be able to recreate this portrait 1,000 times over just from memory. And then she discusses would you draw something for me, and hands her a book and chooses a page in that book. And Mariana, she draws a self-portrait of her for Heloise. It just is a lasting memory, something that she can look back to and remember. And then, the mother comes, everyone gets dressed, goes about their separate ways. And then you have the final goodbye where, Mariana, she gets paid for, you know, performing her duty and completing the portrait. It's her time to leave. I mean, she obviously can't stick around, and she has her final rounds of goodbyes, and then she goes. There's that final moment where, like in the book, Heloise runs down the stairs to stop Mariana from leaving, and she's like, turn around, and, you know, has that whole moment just like in the book, almost verbatim, and Mariana leaves. You know, it cuts out. Next thing you know, Mariana's at an art show, and she's showing off some of the art that she has done under her father's name. I guess as a woman back then, you wouldn't have been able to, you know, put out your own art in some cases. So she put it under her father's name so it would get recognized. And if anyone asked, she would explain that it was her piece. While she's there, this is many years later, while she's there, she sees a portrait on the wall. Not her portrait, but a portrait of Eloise with a daughter. So you have that, she sees it, and all these emotions come flooding through. And she sees that Eloise is holding a book, and her finger is holding the book at the page. You see the page number that she's holding it to, and it's the page that she drew that portrait on. So it was kind of like this portrait's going to get out, and I want, if there's any chance that Mariana is going to see this, that I want her to know that I still think about her. And so, I thought that was just kind of like a beautiful nod, and she saw it, and she was like, just reassured that what they had was what she remembers. And I love that. And then lastly, the end of this movie, it sucks you in. It's the last 30 seconds to a minute, but it sucks you in. And earlier in the film, there's a scene where the two of them are sitting at, she's trying to explain. Heloise asks Mariana what orchestra music's like, and she can't really explain it, but she tries. There's a harpsichord in the room, and she plays this favorite tune of hers, a Vivaldi tune, and just kind of talks about the piece while she's playing it for her, and trying to describe what an orchestra is like to someone who's never heard one, and doing her best. At this film ends with Mariana attending an orchestra show, and she sees from afar, she's alone, mind you, which kind of harks back to earlier in the film with the idea of solitude and doing something just for yourself. And so she's there, and she sees off, she notices in the distance a woman walking, and it's Heloise. She's there by herself doing this in solitude. And what I loved about this is she notices it, and you get the commentary describing her entering the, to her seat in the theater, on the balcony. You see all this going on, and it, no longer, you're at this point seeing through the eyes of Mariana, and as she's looking across at Eloise, the production starts, and it zooms in closer and closer and closer to Eloise, and you think, and this is another thing I like, is I feel like if this movie was made in America, you would have had her like look over, and like there'd be a like an obvious, you know, connection of sight, and the movie would have just ended. The last 30 seconds of this film is, the music starts. It's the Vivaldi song that she was showing her earlier in the film, and you just see it zoom in closer and closer, slower and slower to Heloise, and you see that like all this emotion, she realizes what song it is. It's all this emotion is flooding back in, and you see her like breathing heavier. She's realizing, like, it's that poet moment where she goes back to realizing what she had in the good time, and you see her, she starts to cry, and the breathing just starts getting heavier and heavier, and then the film ends. It's such a beautiful movie. If I had to give this a star rating, a solid 5. It's just in that last 30 seconds alone, an amazing piece of film. That's definitely going into, like, I love little nuances like that in film, and I feel like you only get like split seconds of it, but this, you had 30 seconds of what was just honest, true, bold emotion, and how somebody by themselves would react to something like this. So, I mean, definitely like 5 stars, a solid 5-star. This is a beautiful movie, and I do want to watch it again soon, and just really take the film in. There's a scene in the film. I'm gonna put the song, a link for the song below. But there's a scene where they go back, or they go out to when Sophie's trying to get, you know, find out about her pregnancy. They go to this, it's like a, I wouldn't say a party, but a gathering in a field. There's a fire there, and there's a song that starts up, just like an acapella, like a group acapella, and, you know, just clapping percussions. And, you know, I'm gonna put the song below, but it's a beautiful moment in the film. Just the song is, it's I don't want to call it haunting, but it's, I mean, it's a beautiful like composition with everyone together, everyone joining in, and just having that moment. Definitely check this film out. If you've seen it, throw down in the comments below something that stood out to you. If you liked it or not. If you enjoyed this video, this was a longer one, but I wanted to go deeper into this film. So if you liked it, smash that thumbs up. If you didn't, and you were just like, man, shut up and talk about the high points, smash that thumbs down. If you like these videos, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, let you know when I have new videos coming up. Down below, I'll also put my Facebook page, so you can see, you know, just what movies I'm watching on a daily, whenever I'm watching them, and, you know, just fun little clips I find along the way. So check that out. You can reach out to me there as well. So as always, be good to one another. Thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.